Hello, hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Nicholas Lamar Souter. Uh, in the news, a lot happens to be going on, so let's see. Oh, and of course, I'm getting a breaking notification right now. Let me just double check. Let me check and make sure that this isn't something urgent. Uh, oh dear. Okay. No, this is interesting. So, 3 minutes ago, a judge has now issued a temporary injunction barring the enforcement of the Texas abortion law. So that is breaking as we speak. I will try to get you more of that before the end of the show, but it looks like there has now been an injunction issued barring any kind of enforcement of the Texas abortion law. Texas did reach out to well, it wasn't Texas, but the Supreme Court was asked to weigh in on the issue and found that until the law takes into effect, they had no jurisdiction and were not going to weigh in on the law. At some point, obviously, they're going to be forced to weigh in, and several people have identified themselves. I think it was 3 doctors have said that they have engaged in, or they have performed an abortion since the law took effect. They said this explicitly so that they could be sued to force a challenge in the U.S. Supreme Court. So we'll see. But for now, it looks like, as of just moments ago, an injunction was issued and Texas can no longer enforce that law. Now, what's interesting, of course, is that Texas technically could not enforce the law in the beginning. It was the average citizen who would actually act on that law. So presumably what this means is no citizen can file in court against anybody who has participated in any way, including just any ancillary way, in the process of helping someone attain an abortion. So we will see, and hopefully we'll learn. It's going to be probably about a half hour, maybe a 45-minute show tonight. We'll see what we figure out before the end of the show, but that's where that stands. Now, with global warming, it's interesting. The language is always interesting insofar as how does it shape the misconceptions people have. Of course, not every part of the world is warming. When they say global warming, what they mean is the average temperature of the Earth is going up, but in places it's going down. It's a massive shift in weather patterns, and deserts are starting to get more rain, which may sound like a great thing, but not if it's at the cost of particularly tropical areas suddenly getting a lot less. But an example of that has occurred today. Now, the average, let's see, in August, actually, Tennessee had shattered its previous record for rainfall, getting 17 inches of rain. Tennessee, one town in Tennessee, this was in one day more than half their average rainfall for the year. However, today in Italy, they got 30 inches of rain. That was over a 12-hour period, so that's about 2.5 inches an hour. This is near biblical levels of rainfall in Italy today. This has, again, shattered any record across all of Europe. Nowhere in Europe have they ever seen this much rain. To put it in some context, London would get roughly 30 inches of rain. London, which we all know is well known for rather rainy weather. London usually gets an average of about 30 inches of rain over a 15-month period. Seattle gets that much rain usually in about a year. Seattle gets 30 inches of rain a year on average. Italy got that in 12 hours today. Warmer air holds more water. Glad global warming is fake. I'd hate to see what it was if it was real. And I should put in the caveat, since everybody is so, that was a joke. It's real. I'll put that caveat in, since apparently, yeah, can't be too careful. The Select Committee hearing that's investigating the January 6th riots, Capitol Hill riots, has decided they are now going to call on Ms. Haugen. Ms. Haugen has testified before Congress on her experience at Facebook. She was hired to help them comply with new laws regarding transparency and laws regarding stopping hateful conduct and Oh, hold on a second. Let me, sorry. Uh, I believe we have Joe coming in now, so let me just, there we go. Or Joe, how are you?
Hello.
Hey, let me see if, oh, there you are. And, wow, let's see, I think the camera there seems to have, so what I'm going to do is make that just a touch. I don't know how or why it expanded so much, but let me get you a little
Yeah, that
more.
looks like a giant compared to you.
Yeah, well, it's of course also, as you can tell, it's actually going right over the screen. So you're, dude, stay in your lane, man. You were going a little bit into my camera and the whole. I don't know what happened there, but all right.
I am Serious Mind, the giant. I
Oh,
will destroy everyone.
Lord. Oh, oh, Daryl Frost. Oh, I'm not going to go too far into troll land today, except for save the fact. Yes, we absolutely, and this has to be acknowledged. This absolutely, please let's acknowledge this. The planet Earth goes through natural cooling and warming cycles. It just does, and they can be pretty significant. That's why we had an ice age. However, this current cycle, which in fact we were due for a warming cycle, this one is now up to about 1,000 times faster than it would be under normal natural processes. We know how and why. I'm not going to get into it, but unfortunately, it's again one of those things with the masks, right? You know, because the masks actually do help you a little bit. People say, well, that's why you're wearing the masks. No, nobody cares if the mask helps the person who's wearing it. Really, sorry, nobody cares. That's not why there would be mask mandates. It's because it helps the people around you. If you have COVID, it drastically reduces the rate of infection. But because it turns out that masks can help you a little bit, suddenly the topic has shifted to that, and that's what masks are about. Nope, that's not what they're about.
Yeah, I also want to address too this because I've heard you know, this line of thinking over and over that oh well, it's just natural cycles. It's not, and we know it's not. And the thing is, it's what we do is we can look at the overall trend lines as to what direction everything is moving, and we can also see the rate that they're moving. So even with up and down cycle, you can plot the overall direction of of anything that's cyclical, and look at the overall trend. And so we've done this, and the funny thing about this is that we have evidence. We've been aware of this going back almost 100 years now. So it was one of the first times it started being written about. So what pisses me off is when you hear people like we haven't reached the ultimate result of this, so therefore it can't be happening. It's kind of like saying, well, it's midnight and it's dark out, so the idea that it's going to get light outside in the morning is crazy.
Well,
And I'm
well,
just so tired of it.
yeah, me too. And one of the things is, I mean, I would also study how we know. I mean, figure out how we know before you sit there and say we can't know. How about you actually look at the evidence for yourself and then contradict? Well, go after that evidence. Don't go after people who are sitting there saying we know. Go after the evidence and say this is why the evidence is wrong. But the best evidence is, of course, ice core samples. What you do is you drill into an Arctic ice shelf that has been around for hundreds of thousands of years, and with each new snowfall, it actually traps the atmosphere under the snow. So we have thousands of years of samples of the Earth's atmosphere and have been able to tell really quite easily what the atmosphere has been in the past and how it's changed based on elements of it that are still trapped literally in the ice. And that's one of many pieces of evidence that we use. Again, I'm not going to get into it, but I think you're going to have to explain how and why. It's been actually very predictable. We understand how and why the temperature changes based on carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and how it has gone up precipitously much faster than it ever has, and we can easily account for it by human activity.
And on top of that, what I always like to point out to them is that the permafrost is melting. The permafrost. It was called permafrost for a good reason, because it's been frozen for a very long time. It was expected to stay frozen for a very long time. So even in places where it's still freezing, but it's not freezing as much, And so the permafrost, because in order to keep that ground solid, it requires to be a particular amount below freezing. It's not anymore, and the cycles are such that that ground is actually thawing out, and that's actually a big concern. People are talking about viruses. There are bacteria and viruses and so forth, and things that can survive through all that temperature, all the frozen temperature, and that basically locked in the earth for thousands, if not longer years, things that we may not have any natural immunity to, because the last people who actually faced those were, are long dead. And due to genetic drift, we could now be susceptible to them. So this is a serious problem.
Yeah, it's much like cutting into the rainforest, and you never know what's going to come out. We're messing with things that we don't yet fully understand.
Plus the fact that while the sea level rise has not reached its ultimate thing, we also have evidence that the predicted sea level rise is in fact happening. Just look at Galveston and people, they're trying to stop things with seawalls. And that seawalls will help you with storm surge, but it's not going to help you when the water's coming up through the fucking basement.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And we mentioned earlier, I don't know if you caught this, but Italy has had 30 inches of rain today in a 12-hour period. 30 inches, which shatters any record in Europe. Just as a comparison again, the average rainfall for Seattle is 30 inches a year. They had the average rainfall for Seattle in 1 year, and they had that in 12 hours. So that's...
And they're having a serious problem in Venice, and a little bit of that is from just normal sinking. It's built on pilings, but it's not all that. It's also the fact the sea level has actually risen, and so there's places in parts of Venice now that flood daily due to tidal flooding.
So, and then the other interesting piece of news, don't know if you caught this, but literally just as we were going to air, there was breaking news that the Texas abortion law has been, the enforcement of it has been suspended by a court. We don't know anything other than that, just literally came in as we were going live. So we've got, I don't know where that's going to go, but it's good to see that that's at least moving forward. So the select committee that is investigating January 6th wants to hear from Haugen. She testified as to what's been going on at Facebook. Very little of it is anything that we didn't really suspect, but it's nice to hear somebody who's a real insider talking about it and talking about deliberate attempts to circumvent regulations that would keep them in place. Now, shortly after she testified throughout yesterday and in particular today, Zuckerberg himself has personally replied to these charges and said that she, quote, painted a false picture of the company and that she had, in fact, only been hired to research Facebook's impact on children, and that she had taken all of these documents, which she had obtained, according to him, illegally. She had taken them out of context. And that she cannot be trusted to properly portray the company's findings. Facebook itself has come out with its own statement saying that she was actually a former product manager at Facebook who worked for the company for less than 2 years, had no direct reports, and had never attended a single decision point meeting with C-level executives. She replied to this saying, quote, well, I was there for 6 years, had numerous direct reports, and led many decision meetings with C-level executives, and find the perspective shared on the need for algorithm regulation, research transparency, and independent oversight to be entirely valid for debate. So they're already going after her, and it appears bold-faced lying about her credentials. And in fact, when she had first joined, they kind of touted her out, if I recall, and said here she was going to help keep them in line with the regulations. Another interesting piece of news, body cam footage has been released from the Minneapolis Police Department and of their response into the protests in the days of George Floyd's death. In it, a police captain is talking about hunting people as opposed to just chasing them down, and finally teaching them a lesson for their rioting in the streets. In one video, a Minneapolis police commander is heard telling an officer during a debrief, quote, tonight it was just nice to hear, quote, we're going to find some people, and instead of chasing them, we're going. We're going to just. I'm sorry, I lost the thread on that. We're going to go find some more people instead of chasing people around. And let's see. The commander continued. You guys are out hunting people now. It's just nice to see a change of tempo. And then when, let's see, protesters were breaking curfew over frustration over George Floyd, and one of the officers came up and indicated that he was extremely frustrated over these protests, and another officer agreed and said, quote, "Fuck these people." Then on May 30th, a Minneapolis police sergeant is heard saying, "We're rolling down Lake Avenue. The first fuckers we see, we're going to handle them with 40s, which is an apparent reference to rubber bullets, the non-lethal rounds. 5 minutes later, they speed towards a gas station. Go, 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 get up there, go get them, let them have it, boys. Crying a sergeant. Now, this actually became news when they did, in fact, open fire, striking, among others, the man who owned the police station, the gas station, who was attempting to defend it, and his family, who were all attempting to protect the police station. They opened fire before. Without warning and without giving them a chance to disperse. So, meanwhile, this has also become an issue because a number of these, we're going to have to, okay, I believe it appears as if the thing is closed there, so I don't actually have, I apologize, I am down on one piece of information I needed. There was a man who, and this is now being used, nope, I'm sorry, I think the information got replaced with the Timberview school shootings. So I could try it by memory. There's a case that was tried. The officers, I think, were found not guilty. Officers exchanged fire with a man in a truck. Now, the man in the truck had been attempting to protect civilian property. He was a civilian. He had a rifle in the backseat of his car, and people started running up to him, yelling, they're firing, they're shooting at people. Now, what he didn't know was that these were police officers. They were in an unmarked vehicle, and they had been opening fire without warning, without identifying themselves, and without asking the crowd to disperse. They had been opening fire with the rubber bullets into the crowd. This man got hit by a rubber bullet, was unable to distinguish between the rubber bullet and a live round. So he thought he had been hit with an actual bullet, and he thought he was bleeding out. He decided to return fire. He returned fire with live rounds, at least 3 or 4 shots at the vehicle that was containing the officers. They realized that they were receiving live rounds in exchange, in return, and then opened fire on the man. Now, fortunately, this was resolved without injury, but resulted in a number of lawsuits. And this footage had not yet been released as a part of those lawsuits, but it does look like they were looking for trouble.
Well, especially driving around an unmarked vehicle, probably not wearing uniforms, so basically indistinguishable from gang members. And when they are like that, they are a gang. Basically, when you're going around looking for trouble, they're basically an armed gang with a license to kill. And and this is the problem. Again with the good guy with the gun. This guy was basically the proverbial good guy with the gun, and it went badly. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but it could have gone really, really badly.
All right, it was so I guess it was Jail Stallings, who was being tried for shooting at police officers. He did not know that they were police officers. They were in an unmarked vehicle, and this is part of new evidence that was unavailable during his trial, and demonstrates that they actually lied, that they had not identified themselves, that they were not in a marked vehicle, and had actually fired at him first. He had been struck. He did not realize he was struck with a rubber bullet. I assume adrenaline is pumping. You get hit by something like that. I assume it's probably pretty hard to tell right away, especially if you've never actually been shot. what you were hit with, and he returned fire. So that is, yeah, I agree with you. I think that's kind of the nightmare scenario that those of us who are against the Second Amendment and for gun control often use, which is, you don't always know who you're shooting at. You think you do, but you don't. So I think that's all right. Yeah, let's be a little careful how much we engage the troll. I've seen him around, and I appreciate that he's willing to have a discussion, and I usually encourage that. But I want to be a little careful at derailing other topics.
Well, the other thing too is that, again, it's like, okay, I don't have a degree in this stuff, nor do I work in the field. Neither do you, and I'm sure he doesn't either. So basically, it's like, so these people, they do it. It's kind of like the stuff that Ben Shapiro does, and that other, Crocker, whatever the guy. He was like, well, let's talk to people who don't have, a background in this, and if they can't answer the stuff I just made up out of my head, I win. Well, no. They never actually go talk to the people who actually know the details. And here's the thing: I had a discussion with a guy I know. He's a chemist. I'm a chemical engineer, and he basically sent me something that he thought was debunking the whole thing. So I look at what he sent me, and what it said was that, and the argument was that CO2. The band of energy that basically the way it works is that sunlight comes down, hits the earth, and reflects off, and then that gets absorbed by CO2. Yeah, but the argument was that the band at which that absorption takes place is saturated, so that you could double, triple, quadruple the amount of CO2, and that it wouldn't matter because it's already soaking up all the energy that there is that could be soaked up. But then when I pointed out to him is that, well, what you're missing, Roger, is that even though all the energy is being trapped, if there's more CO2, that energy will be trapped closer and closer and closer to the surface. And that was actually in the paper that he sent me. So he acknowledged that. I'm like, well, Roger, if the energy is being captured closer and closer to the surface, now you have conduction at the surface, so it's going to be hotter at the surface. And he totally missed that, even though, someone with his, even being a chemist, he should have understood that. But he wasn't thinking in terms of rates. He was just looking at absolutes, and there's a difference. So, the paper he gave to me as the debunk actually supported, the idea that it's getting warmer at the surface, and that's causing problems. I'm tired of these people, that they have no knowledge or very little knowledge. And then they'll choose people who maybe know some, like I know something, but I'm not an expert. You're not an expert.
Neither of us.
Debating us means nothing.
Well, and
clearly,
there's a fair
plus
criticism.
the fact that he's saying, oh, well, this has been happening for 15,000 years. Yes, it has, and it's rapidly accelerating in the last 150. So
much faster than it should. All right. So I think Titan brings up a good point, which is I think we should continue the discussion on the Discord. Minus one thing that I'd like to say, just in general. Neither of us are experts, so what the hell are we doing opining on it, right? Well, a couple of things. First of all, I am an educator. And as an educator, I do try to have some background knowledge on what I'm discussing. And I do know experts, including an aunt of mine who spends 4 months out of the year literally in Antarctica doing this work. So, right. That's important when people tell me that Antarctica doesn't exist because they're flat earthers, but that's a whole nother spectrum of people. And the fact that a large number of my family are scientists, and a number of them are heavily involved in this kind of thing. Well, okay, still, nonetheless, they could be wrong. And that's an important thing to acknowledge. But here's one of the things that makes science really cool and science is irrefutably, nobody can debate this. I've had people try. You're unhinged if you try to debate this. And I rarely make statements that bold, but bear me out. It is the most successful human endeavor in history. We have accomplished more using the scientific method in the last 400 years than the entire species combined accomplished in the 100,000 years before that. In the last 400 years, we've landed a man on the moon, for crying out loud, and got him back alive. No small feat. Antibiotics, sterilization, pasteurization, plastics, electricity, everything. that's been in the last 400 years thanks to science. That does not mean it's perfect. You cannot use that to argue that it's perfect or that scientists cannot be wrong. But one of the reasons it works is because of peer review, because they check each other all the time. And when you talk to a real scientist, they hedge the living daylights out of everything because they know everything they say is going to be attacked by everybody else they're talking to. So they don't say it unless they are really, really sure. And it gets checked. And if it can't be checked, if it cannot be peer reviewed, if nobody else can duplicate your results, guess what? Doesn't matter if it's true or not, you're done. It's gone. And this is why there's complete transparency. This is why it works and why it's usually right. And there is as much scientific consensus on this as there is on just about anything else, including but not limited to gravity. I have met a couple of scientists who disagree with the consensus on global warming. But first of all, in every case where I've been told that the scientist disagrees, I've gone and seen what the scientist actually says, and usually there's a couple of caveats in that disagreement. It's not correctly represented. And second of all, not in a single case have they actually been a scientist in the field. I cannot go out and do all that research. I have to rely on people across the world in other countries doing that research, all of whom have reached the same conclusions independently, and say to myself, that's enough for me to say it's true. To undermine that is a challenge. And unless you're trying, you can undermine me. I'm not an expert, but I don't have to be. That's what makes science work, because I can't be an expert in every field that I have to. If I had to be an auto mechanic to fix my car because I couldn't trust everybody, imagine how much time that would take. So I rely on the knowledge of experts. It doesn't mean it's true, but especially in the realm of science, that's what you have to undermine. And just because you could come up with an argument that I don't know or don't understand, and quite frankly, I haven't been convinced by anything that's been said yet, doesn't mean anything, because I'm not an expert in the field, and what I say actually carries very little weight. I am repeating my understanding of that knowledge. Joe, are you going to say something? And then I really do want to move on. But I think
the only last thing I want to say is, like, the scientists at some of the oil companies who have the most to lose by accepting that this is real have acknowledged that it's real. So believe me, when people have a vested interest in denying it, come out and say, "Yeah, no, it's true." That's a pretty good sign.
Oh, that's a really
because their whole goal in investigating is to try to find that it's not true, because it's bad for them if it is.
And that was.
And so it's like, well, I'm doing a scientific method. No, you're not. You've said, having Nephilim Free looked at scientific information, and he came to ridiculous conclusions too. So, that's just because, you're going to tell me, I'll study this for 2 years, just like Nephi, and Nephi's opinion is worthless too.
That was an interesting point too. Yeah, I think it was Exxon. That decided to do their own research into it in order to debunk it, and they found out it was absolutely completely true. So they buried their research because they couldn't use it, because they were doing their research, so they've hidden it. And it turns out they've known for quite some time that it's true based on their own. So, all right, we are going to move on, and listen, Discord afterwards. Anybody wants to join us in the Discord, I'm more than happy to have that conversation in the Discord, but I am glad at a minimum this gave us an opportunity to discuss how science works, because I think there are a lot of people who don't necessarily understand that, or understand just how successful it's been. So, thank you.
Well, and basically, and at a certain point, again, even when there's a scientific consensus, doesn't mean the scientists are necessarily right. However, the burden of proof now is on the others who want to say this. Well, they have to go in and say, okay, well, all that stuff you believe is wrong because here, the methods were bad, or the data was bad, or there's some new information that you didn't have, or whatever. But the burden of proof shifts at that point.
Yep. All right. And then the last thing I wanted to discuss today, I think we've hit everything. And again, I'm keeping an eye out to see if anything new comes in on the Texas abortion law. But the last one is, there is finally what appears to be a break in the deadlock over the debt ceiling. Mitch McConnell has offered two possible solutions to this. The Dems have picked their favorite one. So again, we discussed this earlier, and it's nuanced, and I get it wrong on occasion myself as well. But there are basically two ways to get around the debt ceiling. The first and preferred way in general is to suspend the debt ceiling, to say, oh, there's no debt ceiling anymore for 6 months, however long, and just go forward. The other way is, in fact, to raise the debt ceiling. In general, when they say raise the debt ceiling, they're actually talking about either solution. They're talking about removing it for some time or another. So he has offered to do both. It looks like the Dems are opting for a solution whereby there will be no reconciliation process. The debt ceiling will be raised by a certain amount, not suspended, but in fact raised. This apparently is actually Mitch McConnell's preference because he can tie that to them later and say, oh, this is how much money they want to spend, which is, of course, not what it means, but what he probably intends to do. However, by doing this, they can avoid reconciliation and avoid a few other difficulties. And what they're doing now is they're trying to get Treasury to get back to them on how much money they're going to need at Treasury to get all the way through to December and then raise it by that amount. None of this has been put to paper. They don't have a bill yet. They're working on it right now, and they're working on trying to get it done. There is some hope they can get it done tonight. They'll certainly be working through the night, whether they can or cannot. They are working on it, and that appears to be right now, for whatever reason. I don't understand why the Dems prefer this method, but that appears to be their preferred method. And it looks like it's going to go through cleanly if they do that. So it kicks it down till December, and puts a specific cap on it, which is a little unusual, but at least it's not reconciliation. Joe, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Democrats are making a mistake because, like you said, it's just kicking the can down the road for 2 months, and then it's going to be a problem then because Christmas is coming up, and Congress is going to let out. The only potential good side there is that they might be willing. The Republicans might be more willing to do something continuing then, because who wants the government to shut down at Christmas time and basically tell all the federal workers, oh yeah, you're not going to get paid at Christmas time? I don't think anybody, no one wins if that happens. But certainly not the people who make it happen. But I think that the Democrats should hold out for more than that. But at this point, what it is, I think they want to get things going so that they can get the other priorities taken care of, because that they need. That's we talked about that last time, that they need 6 to 8 weeks to get that through. So at least it allows them to get that other, and it looks like Manchin now is finally moving off of his original $1.5 trillion ceiling on the Build Back Better bill. So it looks like there's hope then of getting that through. And so I think it's a calculation. And I'll say this: if the Democrats can get the Build Back Better through before December, then it's probably worth it, because at least they'll have it, because that's what they want. They want to have some legislative accomplishment before the end of the year, because it's going to be difficult, and because there's elections again next year, and half of next year is going to be spent on campaigning. So they really desperately need to get this through, and they want to get the transportation and infrastructure bill through as well. So yeah, if it helps that happen, I guess it makes sense. But if not, if they fail to get that through, then they just wait. Then all they did was torpedo themselves. I want to say too, since I did make a prediction that was completely wrong, that I expected that the government was going to shut down. I said 100%, and it didn't happen. I'm glad, but I was convinced that it was just going to shut down.
Yeah, when that happened, I was just like, I am going to give him such a hard time after that, but I try not to.
Oh yeah, you don't have to. I'll give myself a hard time.
Oh yeah, I know. Well,
I didn't think that McConnell was going to relent.
Just take all the wind out of my sails, I was just gonna, bust your ass on that thing, and sure, now you deny me that too. No, I decided
you can't shoot me if I shoot me first.
Exactly. I wasn't actually going to do that too much, because I have to say this, which is I ask people to speculate a lot. And nobody likes to speculate. But I really I appreciate it when they're willing to.
I don't mind speculating, based on assuming that I have any information to go on, and I also don't mind admitting if I was wrong. An attribute that is sorely lacking in our modern arenas.
I'm very much the same way. I don't mind admitting if you're wrong either. So. All right. Well, anyways, it was and anyone could have been right, but I'm glad we, so that I had forgotten because so much was going on.
I was going to say real quick, when you just said that, it made me think of George Carlin when he was talking about how he tried to believe in God and he just, couldn't, but he said, if I'm wrong, let him strike this audience dead.
Oh, dear Lord. All right. Well, so I guess at least one more question, and then we'll sort of try to wrap this up. But
Okay.
well, no, one other minor thing, but we don't really know anything about it, so it'll just be reiterating what everybody already knows. But so, why do you think I the Dems appear to be painting this, and it appears to me that this is accurate, as putting their agenda back on the table, and that their agenda can now move forward. They get reconciliation back. They get the ability to move forward on this, and the holdouts appear to now be going forward. That was reasonably predictable if McConnell caved. Why did he cave?
Huh. That's a tougher question. See, the thing is that I think deep down McConnell knows that every single time that they've actually done the shutdown, the Republicans have paid the price for it, because people, as much as people get fooled by what Republicans say, that's one where they kind of don't. So I mean, basically the Republicans' base gets fooled, but they're already fooled, so it doesn't matter. And but the rest of the people tend to realize who's at fault and have generally held the Republicans accountable for those shutdowns. So I think he realizes that what he wanted to do is he wanted to jockey for position, because see, it still plays with his base though. So like by putting it off to December, and especially putting that cap, they just like you said, he's gonna make political hay out of it later. So he doesn't really lose by giving in, not much. And then it looks like, hey, I was reasonable. I gave into the debt. So now in a way,
Yeah.
December plays even better for him, because he can say, well, we tried to work with the Democrats and they couldn't even stay within the limits we agreed on.
That's a good point. All right. Well, that makes sense. And so we had a number of people concerned about the arrest of the student today. We don't know. Apparently, he is in good condition, and he is going to be charged with 3 counts of assault with a deadly weapon. And so it looks like there isn't going to be any attempted murder or any. In general, they go for just slightly above whatever the maximum they think they could get. So that they negotiate down. So assault with a deadly weapon is serious. This kid is facing some unbelievably serious trouble, but assault with a deadly weapon certainly does appear to be appropriate based on what we understand. So they are anticipating arraigning him probably tomorrow on 3 counts of assault with a deadly weapon and 1 or 2 other smaller charges. So we haven't learned very much else about what's going on, except that the 15-year-old was in fact in surgery and in ICU for a while. The surgery was considered successful, but we honestly don't know a whole heck of a lot more than that, other than it appears as if all of the 3 people who were hit are expected to survive, and the 4th one was released on the scene. So, okay, and then Humanist Sweden McConnell's donors were terrified of a default. That's a good. So, one thing that the Dems started doing and Biden started doing was actively talking to the CEOs of major corporations, saying this is what McConnell is doing, and they can apply far more pressure to McConnell than anybody else can. And so that's an interesting insight. So I appreciate that. I think he's got a point.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that angle, but I think that makes a lot of sense. And as far as to the kid with the gun, I was stunned that he was taken alive and in good order. I'm glad. So in that case, then I'll say bravo to the police for not doing what they usually do and overreacting depending on the ethnic background of the shooter.
I had kind of assumed he was going to be taken alive, and largely because it's a kid and the entire country was watching. I think that changes the dynamic. But that's not to say that. I think everything that people were saying in the live chat was like, oh wow, just because the entire country was watching, I thought that he had a
I think that does make a big difference, because they're going to have to answer for that. But even there, before he was actually in custody, I was hearing what those officers were saying, and all the people were saying when we were watching the show about how it's all about saving lives and protecting the public. And I'm like, oh, they're setting up a justification if they end up shooting him. That we had no choice, even though the guy who shot up a church, and the guy who shot up a movie theater, and the guy who shot up this, that, and the other thing, all were taken alive. And but they're very selective about when the public's in danger. But yeah, so I think you're right. I think the TV cameras made a big difference.
Yep. Unfortunately, you know what I mean. I'm glad he was taken alive. I'm glad in this case it helped. It's unfortunate that that's what it takes.
Right.
And that's, yeah. All right. Well, I think that's about it. Anything that we failed to cover that you wanted to quickly mention, and or anything you wanted to say?
No, I think we covered all the big issues anyway. There's I am back from vacation. I got back Friday. That would be the only thing else I would say. I took a fall Thursday. I was on my way to Steve Shive's place, and I stopped for gas and fell off the curb trying to get back to my car. Took a bad fall onto my abdomen, so I actually got to go tomorrow for an ultrasound and an X-ray to make sure that my liver is not damaged. And my elbow got scratched up pretty bad, but I'll survive. Well, hopefully. I'll find out tomorrow if I'm going to survive.
Find out tomorrow. Yeah. Oh, all right. Well, I hope all is good. Glad to have you back. So it was nice checking in with you every now and then on your vacation. It sounds like you were and you went to that conference. I do want to get over.
Yes, I did. It was the Women of Color Beyond Belief. It was quite good. I had a little bit of a depression issue a week ago Saturday, but that was kind of a shame. But other than that, I had a great time, and I saw 22 friends and family along my trip on the way out and the way back. It was an awesome time. I spent some good time with some good people, and it was worth the trip, even with the falling. As long as it doesn't kill me, but
as long as you don't have a liver issue, yeah, okay. Well, let me know. Oh, you can hit me up anytime, and anytime you want to chat, please hit me up. But thank you very much for coming today, and as always. And if you've gotten this far, folks, hopefully that means you like the show. Please like and subscribe. It helps us. I gotta tell you, because I'm a teacher. I teach high school. I'm actually also certified to teach middle school. Never actually done it. Not entirely my thing, but I got the license. I'm not used to, you don't go up in front of a class of students and say, by the way, kids, if you liked the way I taught the class today, why don't you? But I see myself as an educator first and foremost. I hope you guys get something out of this. The reason every YouTuber says this is because it's true. It really does help in the algorithm. Please like and subscribe. If you like the content, take a video you like, share it. That helps too. So we really appreciate your support. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you to the mods. Thank you to Joe. And we will be seeing you guys on Friday for our After Dark Open Hang. Those are every Friday night, 10 p.m. Going to see if I can wrangle Joe in to come to that. You already do so much stuff on In Time. I was just like, Joe, you want to do one more show? It's like, Nick, please stop pestering me.
Hey, if I can, yeah. I mean, I generally don't turn an opportunity to talk.
Yeah, you and I share that in common, I think. That's why we get along so well. All right. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful evening, and we will see you guys Friday.